What if I told you Blake Lively's entire case is crumbling? Not because of what was said, but because of what was not said. Because the one name she leaned on, the one star she claimed was in her corner. Taylor Swift has now vanished from the battlefield, her lawyers declaring she is irrelevant. And with that single move, the entire Hollywood power map shifts, leaving Blake exposed, leaving Baldoni emboldened, and leaving all of us waiting for the explosion that is about to rock this courtroom to its core. It is a weekend episode, and there is no turning back because this case has just taken a turn that no one saw coming, and it all revolves around Taylor Swift. Her name alone ignites headlines, and you better believe that every legal filing connected to her will explode across the internet. With fire and chaos, the judge has spoken and denied Justin Baldoni his request to extend the discovery deadline. And while some blogs and outlets rush to publish misleading headlines claiming Taylor Swift has been saved from a deposition, that is not the full truth. And you and I both know that when Taylor Swift is pulled into the center of a storm, it is never simple, it is never quiet. It is always dramatic, explosive, and larger than life. And this moment right here is proof of that. Because the court has essentially said, no, you cannot drag this out any longer, and the world is left asking, will Taylor budge? Will she give in? Will she carve out time before October 20th? Because according to her legal team, that was the first moment she claimed to be free. But now the pressure is mounting. The question is burning in the minds of everyone from legal analysts to die-hard fans. Will she make herself available? Or will this entire spectacle collapse under its own weight? And do not forget that we are talking about a case where Wayfarer Justin Baldoni and Brian Friedman have been accused of pulling PR stunts, spinning narratives, and fighting a battle that seems less about justice and more about control and perception. But even if they did not intend this moment to be about public relations, that is exactly what it has become. Because when you drop the name Taylor Swift into any courtroom filing, you have just guaranteed global attention. And that is exactly what happened here. The filings and the denials have set the stage for a showdown, unlike anything we have seen in Hollywood legal circles before now. To truly understand how shocking this is, you have to rewind. And remember that Baldoni's team initially subpoenaed Taylor Swift months ago, only to suddenly withdraw that subpoena, claiming they had gathered everything they needed. That decision alone raised questions, eyebrows, and suspicions, because why walk away from the biggest possible witness? Unless there was strategy, unless there was hesitation, unless there was something lurking behind the curtain. And then just as the dust seemed to settle, Baldoni returned with yet another push, this time saying they needed until October 20th to depose her. But the judge slammed the door shut, saying the discovery deadline is the discovery deadline. And no amount of star power can change that rule. And in that single ruling, the narrative shattered for everyone watching, because while the public was misled by screaming headlines declaring Taylor safe, the truth was that the court did not protect her at all. It simply refused to allow Baldoni the luxury of delay. And that means the only question left is, what happens now? Does Taylor Swift step into this arena even for a moment? Or does the strategy collapse, leaving Baldoni with nothing but smoke and mirrors? And the suspense here is crushing. Because Taylor's lawyers did not just say she was unavailable. They went further. They put on record a statement that screamed with finality. My client has no material role in this action. That phrase alone was like a hammer smashing down on Blake Lively's storyline. Because let us not forget Blake herself. Once boasted that Taylor Swift was in her corner, helping with casting, guiding, with creative choices, and standing as one of her dragons. That was her word, dragons. And yet here Taylor Swift's legal team says no, nothing. None of that is real. She is uninvolved, irrelevant, disconnected. And when you see that in black and white, it does not just look like a denial. It looks like a calculated move to separate Taylor Swift from Blake Lively in the most official way possible. And that right there should terrify Blake, because if her star witness, if her closest ally, if the pop star she invoked as part of her army now distances herself completely, then what does that leave Blake with? Nothing but isolation and silence. And if you think that is not intentional, think again, because Taylor Swift's team does not stumble. They plan, they prepare, and every single word in that filing was meant to send shockwaves across the courtroom and across Hollywood itself. And that is why people are whispering that maybe, just maybe, this was not about discovery at all. Maybe this was about strategy, about optics, about planting a legal flag in the ground that says, do not drag us into this storm. We will not be used as weapons in your war. And When you look at it from that perspective, the drama takes on an even darker shade, because it suggests that Baldoni may have never truly expected to depose Taylor Swift in the first place. Maybe he dangled her name for leverage, maybe he used her. As a symbol, maybe the entire thing was crafted to corner Blake and force her allies to scatter. And if that is the case, then we are looking at a legal chess match of the highest order where one move changes everything, and everyone watching is left gasping, wondering what comes next. Because Taylor's denial of involvement is not just a line in a filing, it is a torpedo aimed directly at Blake Lively's credibility. Her claims, her narrative, her PR campaign, all of it now looks shaky when the superstar she leaned on says, "No, I was never a part of this." And as we sit here on this weekend episode, the stakes could not be higher, the drama could not be louder, and the suspense could not be sharper, because the discovery window is closing. The clock is ticking and the truth is hanging just out of reach, and I promise you this is only the beginning. Because the deeper you dig into this, the more shocking it becomes, and the more it feels like we are racing toward a revelation that will change everything we thought we knew about this case. Now imagine this courtroom battlefield where every filing is like a sword strike and every ruling is like a shield slamming into the ground. Blake Lively asked for her own extension, saying she needed just 10 more days because Wayfarer had dumped nearly 80,000 pages of documents on her team at the last minute. And the judge looked at her request and said, "Yes, that is reasonable. That is necessary. You have been diligent and blindsided by late productions." So Blake got what she wanted. A short window to prepare and depose Sarowitz Heath and Baldoni himself. But when Baldoni asked for more time specifically to fit Taylor Swift into the calendar, the judge said no, flat no good, cause no justification, and that rejection landed like an earthquake because it revealed that Baldoni's side could not prove they had done the work early enough. They could not show the receipts, they could not establish that they had tried to secure Taylor Swift's testimony months before, and that absence was damning, because if they truly wanted her words, if they truly needed her evidence, they would have pushed for it back in May when they first raised her name. But instead, they pulled back, they hesitated. They withdrew their subpoena, and now the judge all but accused them of wasting time and hiding behind logistics. And the suspense grows heavier when you realize that this denial may have been more than just procedural. It may have been strategic because it now creates a record where Taylor Swift herself has placed in writing through her lawyers that she has no material role in this fight. And that kind of record is not just legal, it is symbolic. It is a dagger aimed at the heart of Blake's claims. And I need you to picture the scene right now. Blake once telling friends and interviewers that Taylor was in her corner, that Taylor was helping her choose actors, that Taylor was involved in the sparkle department, as if this was a fantasy army of creative warriors. But now the pop star's lawyers say she is uninvolved, she is disconnected, she is not material to the case. And that flips the entire story upside down. Because what does Blake have left without Taylor? What does her credibility look like when her so-called dragon turns into smoke and vanishes? And here is where the real suspense kicks in. Because if Baldoni never truly wanted to depose Taylor, then why did he even push her name back into the headlines? Why risk attaching her to this battle? Again, unless the plan was to expose Blake's exaggerations, unless the plan was to show the court that Blake's allies were not as loyal or involved as she claimed, unless the plan was to slowly chip away at her foundation until the entire structure crumbles, and that possibility makes the hair on your neck stand up because it suggests this is bigger than discovery, bigger than deadlines, bigger than schedules. This is a psychological war, and Taylor Swift has now become the ultimate weapon, not through her words, but through her absence, through her refusal, through her denial of relevance. Because every time Blake invoked Taylor as part of her army, she built the expectation that Taylor would someday appear, that Taylor would validate her story. But now with one letter, that expectation is shattered, and the fallout is enormous. Not just in the courtroom, but in Hollywood itself. Because you better believe executives, agents, and stars are watching and asking if Taylor Swift herself refuses to back Blake. Then what does that say about the stability of her case? What does that say about her narrative? And here is where the suspense goes deeper. Because Taylor Swift has not said she knows nothing. She has said she has no material role, which is a very careful legal phrasing that still leaves the door open, that still creates the shadow of mystery. And that shadow is exactly where the drama thrives. Because maybe she saw something, maybe she heard something, maybe she holds receipts. But if her lawyers argue it does not matter, then the court may never hear it. And that is the kind of suspense that keeps everyone glued. Because when you mix Hollywood with the legal system, you are not just watching a trial, you are watching a high-stakes performance, and right now, every move Baldoni makes, every denial. Blake suffers. Every letter Taylor sends feels like part of an unfolding script too wild to believe, but too real to ignore and remember. We still have that unresolved moment. That rumor, that redacted filing that suggested Taylor Swift may have been present at Blake Lively's house during that infamous confrontation where Ryan Reynolds allegedly unleashed on Baldoni. And if that is true, if Taylor really was in the room, if she really witnessed that storm, then her words could cut through everything. But her lawyers are saying no, she will not be drawn in. And that gap between what she might know and what she will say is the razor-thin line where all of this suspense lives, because one revelation, one leak, one stray piece of evidence could detonate the whole case. And that is why you cannot look away, because the clock is ticking, the filings are mounting, and every single step is dragging us closer to a moment when the truth finally bursts into daylight and either Blake Lively walks away vindicated or she collapses under the weight of her own crumbling narrative. And here is where the real tension explodes, because what we are seeing is not just a scheduling conflict, not just a battle over who gets 10 extra days. We are seeing the slow dismantling of Blake Lively's carefully constructed image, because every denial chips away at her credibility. Every ruling that limits her reach makes her look smaller, weaker, less in control. And for someone who has always presented herself as the queen of perfection, the Hollywood mom, the golden star who can balance career, family, and fame, this unraveling is devastating, and I need you to imagine the whispers spreading through the industry. The agents sitting in Beverly Hills offices asking if Blake is still bankable. The producers wondering if her name can still carry a project. The executives sending late-night texts asking if the risk is too high to attach her to their films. Because lawsuits are not just legal risks. They are reputational bombs, and Blake is standing right in the middle as they detonate, and then layer on top of that the fact that Taylor Swift's lawyers have now carved out a clean public distance from her case, and suddenly Blake looks isolated. Suddenly she looks like she dragged Taylor's name in for cover but never had her actual backing, and that sense of abandonment, that sense of standing alone is not just legal theater, it is psychological warfare. Because, Baldoni's team is savoring this moment. They know they can now point at Blake and say, she exaggerated. She inflated, she tried to use Taylor's star power to shield her. And now Taylor's team says no, she is irrelevant. And in that one move, the judge, the public, and Hollywood itself see Blake stripped of her biggest ally. And here is the chilling part. This is not just about losing Taylor. This is about the court beginning to doubt Blake's word. Because if she misrepresented Taylor's role, then what else has she misrepresented? What else has she exaggerated? What else has she spun? And once a judge or a jury starts asking those questions, the slope gets slippery fast, because credibility is the currency of any lawsuit, and without it, your case collapses like a house of cards. And yet Blake continues to push, continues to file, continues to fight, as if sheer determination can overpower the facts. And that defiance only adds to the suspense because, she is not backing down. She is not going to walk away quietly. And so the courtroom becomes a pressure cooker, and every filing feels like a fuse being lit, and hanging over all of it is the specter of that rumored blow-up at her house with Ryan Reynolds allegedly lashing out, and Taylor Swift allegedly present, because if that piece of the puzzle ever gets confirmed, if any witness comes forward, or any text or video emerges, then suddenly Taylor is not irrelevant. Suddenly she is the linchpin, and that possibility keeps everyone on edge, because it means this entire narrative could flip in an instant, and Baldoni's victory could evaporate, and Blake could claw her way back into power. And this knife-edge balance is what makes this case unlike anything Hollywood has seen before, because it is not just about money or damages or reputations. It is about the truth of relationships. It is about what happens when fame collides with trust. It is about whether Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are willing to risk everything to bury their enemies, or whether their own secrets will bury them first. And while this storm rages in the filings and the motions, you can feel the ripple effect outside the courthouse. You can feel fans turning skeptical. You can feel the media sharpening their knives. You can feel late-night comedians whispering about whether Blake is becoming the punchline. And you can feel producers quietly shifting their loyalty toward Baldoni, because right now he looks steady. He looks like the underdog who has been attacked unfairly. He looks like the man who may walk away vindicated, and in Hollywood, That kind of perception is everything. And yet there is still the ticking clock. Still, the knowledge that discovery will close, that trial will come. And when it does, all the smoke, all the speculation, all the letters from Taylor Swift's lawyers will give way to hard testimony, to cross-examination, to the brutal light of truth. And when that moment comes, the suspense will be unbearable, because the world will finally hear whether Blake was spinning fairy tales, or whether Baldoni was hiding shadows of his own. And the answer to that question will not just decide the case. It will decide careers. It will decide friendships. It will decide who gets to sit at the table of Hollywood power and who gets exiled. And the closer we get to that day, the louder the whispers, the heavier the silence, the more suffocating the tension, because everyone knows a storm is coming and no one knows who will survive it. And so here we are, standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the storm, knowing that whatever comes next will not just be a courtroom ruling, but a cultural earthquake, because Blake Lively has bet her legacy on this fight. And Justin Baldoni has tied his reputation to his resilience, and somewhere, in the shadows, Taylor Swift hovers silent, her lawyers insisting she is irrelevant, while her name alone keeps the entire internet on fire. And what we see now is the anatomy of a downfall or the birth of a comeback. Because if Blake cannot prove her claims, if she cannot sustain the weight of her narrative, then the collapse will be catastrophic, not only in court, but in the court of public opinion. And if Baldoni emerges vindicated, he will not only reclaim his honor, he will walk away with Hollywood itself rallying behind him. But if the rumors are true, if the redacted filings hide secrets, if the whispers about Ryan Reynolds or Taylor Swift or that explosive night come into the light, then everything could shift in an instant, and that is what makes this story unbearable to look away from, because it is not finished. It is still unfolding, and every denial, every deadline, every strategic silence from Taylor is one more page in a script that no one could have written. And yet, here it is playing out in real time in front of millions, and so the only certainty we have is that the truth will not stay buried forever, because Hollywood always eats its secrets. And sooner or later, the final act will arrive, and when it does, it will not just destroy reputations, it will define them forever.